As an art advisor, I'm often asked what to do when you have no more wall space. So it would be a shame to just suddenly stop collecting art because you filled the last wall in your living room. And this is not something that only affects smaller houses or apartments. I know of collectors who have huge houses, but they also have a lot of glass, a lot of windows. So recently a couple moved into a house that had so many windows they actually had less wall space than when they first moved into their honeymoon house. So this is a problem that can affect a lot of people, but I think that it's something that is very natural in the course of collecting. I like to look at artwork and collecting as something that is organic and not static. So it's actually a good opportunity to sit down and say, well, what do we have? What do I still like? What am I still in love with? Anyway, we have put together 3 tips to kind of help you work through this situation. I hope you enjoy them. Our last tip is one of my favorites, so do stay till the end. So our first tip is perhaps the most obvious conclusion. Too many artworks, time to sell. Well, of course this might sound like a cynical response, but really I think it's a natural thing in collecting to be able at some stage to look at maybe your first purchases and to think, really, do I have the same connection to this piece that I had when I first bought it? Tastes change over time. And of course, you might say to yourself that you fell in love with it at one point, but are you still in love with it? It doesn't mean because you like an artist's work that you want to live with it. And when you live with art, it's a different experience. So there might come a time when you actually want to change what is around you in your environment. So if you do decide to sell maybe 1 or 2 pieces, then of course you have lots of options. You could take the works to an auction house, a gallery, a dealer, or even sell online these days. And we'd be really happy to help you find the right solution for you. So now let's move on to the tips that allow you to keep the artworks in your collection. So tip number 2 is about loans. Now this of course will depend on the type of collection that you have. Some collections will have important pieces of art which can of course perhaps be loaned to museums, internationally even potentially. It depends on the artworks, but it is something that it is possible to look into. That gives great provenance to your artworks and it also allows them to be seen by the general public. So a lot of people can enjoy them too. So perhaps you don't have the most expensive piece in the world, but it also might just be an important work in the artist's body of work itself. So this might be interesting, you never know, for a museum. So it's always something that can be discussed. Now, if all the above does not apply to you, do not despair, it's fine. There's some great solutions for you as well. Let me give you the example of a friend of mine who has an art collection. And he got to the point where he had no more walls. What to do? Well, he realized that he worked in a very large art firm and they had many walls. So he transferred his collection to the art firm, and ever since then clients and colleagues have been really enjoying this experience on a daily basis, and for him it's a really gratifying experience and it allows him to continue to collect. So it's up to you now to look around you and to see what could possibly be a solution. For example, your own offices, friends, or perhaps you know someone who opened a restaurant. Either way, you might be able to share your collection, grow your collection, and have an enjoyable experience. I would just recommend getting a loan agreement drawn up, even if it's an amicable arrangement, just to cover questions of insurance and what happens when you might want to take those artworks back. So this brings us on to the final point, which, as I said earlier, is my favorite, which is tip number 3, and this is called the seasonal hang. So this is something that I came up with for people who might have some works in storage and who feel like they never see them. They've maybe been sitting there for a few years and they don't have any wall space, as we've established from the start. And simply this means that once or twice a year, you reimagine the hang of your artworks. So this is a great opportunity to really explore your collection, to perhaps put one artist with another that you would never have expected, or to mix up mediums, or even to get really fun and think about themes that can come up once a year, or concentrate on one particular artist. So this is the advantage of saving you money, because you won't have to redecorate your home potentially. If you want to change the whole ambiance of your home, then simply do an interesting rehang. So it does imply having some works in storage, but this could be easily organized. Even if you have something just in your home, if the works are well packed, that's fine. And if the thought of hanging all your artworks once or twice a year is something that makes you want to run away, don't worry, there's technicians who do this, and for me in maybe 1, 2, 3 hours it can be done, and that will be you set for the next 6 months potentially, or a year. So I hope that you have found these tips useful. Of course, if you have any ideas yourself, please do let us know. We'd be super happy to hear from you, and we'll be back soon with some more insider tips on how to look after your collection. In the meantime, if you enjoyed this video, do let us know, and just keep collecting and be passionate.